Welcome to an enlightening journey. This educational content offers challenging insights. Approach with an open mind. The link for the study guide can be found in the description. Subscribe to join the exploration. Let's dive in without wasting time. Think fast, talk smart, communication techniques. Chapter 1. Understanding communication. Importance of effective communication. Communication is the most important tool that can be used to connect with people. Without effective communication, there will be misunderstanding and chaos. Practically, it is not about the language you use, but how you convey it. Being effective matters as the main purpose of communication is to deliver a message or information and to get feedback from it. It can be in the form of knowledge or action. An example is instructions from a superior to subordinates. If the message isn't delivered effectively, there will be unnecessary action and waste of time. Being effective in communication requires training and learning. To improve communication, at least we must know the communications template, where it consists of sender, message, media, receiver, feedback, and the setting itself. From the template, we'll find what elements we must maximize to create effective communication. Those elements are the key to a successful message. For example, using the right language to address the receiver and creating a positive setting to get positive feedback. High-quality communication will give high-quality results. There are many kinds of success in the communication process, because successful communication does not always have to be based on agreement between the sender and receiver. In decision-making cases, good communication is the one that makes the decision take place effectively. Sometimes, the success of communication is the learning process from event clarification. And there is communication whose main objective is to change the condition from bad to good. But generally, success in communication itself depends on the feedback. High-quality feedback is successful communication. Importance of effective communication. Good communicators can communicate more effectively. Good communication skills can facilitate managers to inspire those they manage. Effective communication is indispensable in team decision-making. It is necessary in conflict resolution. Good communication and persuasive speaking skills often go hand in hand. When we talk, we convey our thoughts using the sender and receiver model. Cognitive information is processed by the sender, who wants to communicate. His target is to transfer the same information to the receiver. All this can happen only if you have clear communication. You will often hear employers speak on the importance of excellent communication skills. Written communication is as important as oral. An engineer writing a report or a customer service representative composing an email often is a picture of the person and company they work for. So any type, whether it is oral to written or nonverbal to verbal communication, is a process that is learned, practiced, and mastered. Foremost, talking smart is one way to get started. Elements of communication. Every communication is based on some basic elements. If the elements are not clear, the communication will not be effective. The elements of communication are as follows. Sender. The person who intends to convey a message is known as the sender or communicator. They are the source of thought and have some thought which they want to transmit. They initiate the process of communication. In an organization, the superior is the source of thought who conveys the message of their superior to their subordinates. Message. A second element of communication is the message. It is the subject matter of communication and may be an order, advice, request, suggestion, opinion, etc. It must be relevant to the objective for which it is meant. Encoding. The third element of communication is encoding. At this stage, a message is converted into symbolic form and transmitted to the receiver. The message is encoded according to the understanding of the receiver. It requires an appropriate decision regarding the content of the message, choice of message, and choice of medium of the message. Communication channel. The next element is the communication channel through which the encoded message is transmitted. There are two types of channels: physical channels and non-physical channels. The physical channels are those that are tangible and can be seen. These channels could be formal or informal. The formal channels are established by the organization for the purpose of transmitting messages relevant to the routine activities of the organization. The non-physical channels are used for transmitting personal messages that may or may not be relevant to the job. These channels are known as grapevine. The choice of channel depends on the nature of the message and the receiver and their understanding of the message. Barriers to communication: lack of attention, interest, distractions, or irrelevance to the receiver. An example is using an overcomplicated diagram when a simpler one will do, jamming the receiver's mind with more information than required, or how about the use of email to an employee rather than having a face-to-face meeting? The aim at the end of the day is that communication must be fully understood, so by removing whatever hinders the process, we are ensuring the receiver is obtaining the correct information. If a message has been internalized wrongly, the reply to the original message can be off tangent and cause a lot of problems and frustration. This is precisely what occurs with distorted messages. The encoding and decoding of a message are subject to influence by selective perception, which can cause the message's meaning to differ considerably. For example, when a sick person says to a family who does not want to catch the illness, "I'm going to stay at my friend's house," they will automatically assume it is unsafe that he is maintaining a distance from them. Instead, the message could imply he doesn't want to infect his friends and may end up doing just that. Language is also a culprit in message distortion, using the same word to mean different things. East slang, jargon, difficult pronunciation, or spelling all lay seeds ready to grow into misunderstanding, hence evolving into a language barrier due to mental or physical impairment. Emotional barriers are closely linked with semantic and psychological noise. When emotions or emotional perceptions of a topic unsheathe the sword, rational objectivity is slain and chances are the message will be misconstrued. So is the case with anything that acts upon a greater biased opinion of it, be it a topic, a person, or a situation. Human judgment is clouded by perceptual bias, which includes making generalizations about people or events or having preconceived notions that would influence one's interpretation of a message, usually to fit their desired view. All of the above serve as impediments to one's ability to receive or send a clear message. The last one, this happens when there is a failure to relate to someone else's position. It's a case of egocentrism, putting emphasis on our own mindset and believing others have the same opinion on something. Chapter 2. Verbal Communication. I will describe how to take your verbal communication to the next level so that you can cultivate an executive presence and have the best chance at impressing your interviewers. A little bit of context first. Stanford MBAs were videotaped in various situations, and the videotapes were shown to their future employees and subordinates, most of whom had never met the MBAs themselves. From these first impressions, the employees and subordinates made surprisingly accurate assessments of the MBA's future success. The higher the students were rated in competence, likability, and attractiveness, the higher their salary was reported to be 3 years later. This section is particularly similar to an exercise that the Stanford MBAs might find themselves doing in the business program. It can also be related to the interview process. Students will interview for jobs both after graduation from GSB and from their previous careers. Be thoughtful about your answers. You may wish to prepare by videotaping yourself and then replaying the video to evaluate your performance. This advice will also be very useful for those applying for a management consulting job, as these roles involve giving frequent presentations and recommendations to clients. In essence, the whole point of this section is to help students establish more credibility and influence. Active listening. Guideline 1. There are several ways to actively listen. Interrupting an individual who is addressing you is a pattern we often follow, whether it's on a phone call, in-person conversation, or through instant messaging. It is a difficult pattern to break, but it can be accomplished. This type of behavior usually conveys to that person that you are more interested in getting your point across, or that what you are talking about is more important. Try to stop yourself from interrupting, even if what the person is saying is disagreeable. Focus on what the person is saying and then formulate a response rather than blurting out the first thing that comes to mind. Try not to be critical of the speaker or what the speaker is saying, and lecturing should also be avoided. A connection should be established in which the speaker is free to speak and the listener can hear what is being said. Another way to stop the pattern of interrupting is to ask open-ended questions after the speaker has finished talking. This will show the speaker that their opinion is valued, and it will allow for a constructive conversation. A constructive conversation is useful in that you are able to explain your point of view and even disagree, but with a good understanding of what the other person is saying. The desired result would be that the other person can see your point of view and you can see theirs. This is an ideal way to reach an understanding between two people. A conclusion is not necessary to finish a conversation or a point of view, and it is useful to leave some topics open so that they may be continued at a later date. Trying to solve a problem after the point in time when both people have forgotten the original details is a frequent error. Speaking clearly and concisely. There are several techniques we can use to deliver a more clear and concise message. First, know the objective. This is essential for any conversation or presentation. It is easy to go off track and often hard to get back to the main point once it's been missed. Establishing a goal in which to steer the conversation is a straightforward and concise way of maintaining and understand the full message. People are more affected and possibly persuaded by someone who is precise in their manner. Being clear and concise is vital in any part of verbal communication, whether giving a presentation, speaking in a meeting, or coaching a team. Using the right words is an art, and there are a few that work often. Concise communicators stick to the point and make sure they don't confuse the listener. The chances for misunderstandings are less, and the chances to engage someone in a more in-depth conversation are increased. Often, successful leaders are those who master the art of using the fewest words to convey their message. Like driving a car with a slipping clutch, speaking without precision can be a frustrating experience for both speaker and listener. The more abstract and vague our language, the less likely we are to be understood and the more likely we are to invite skepticism and misinterpretation. When we communicate clearly and concisely, the more likely our audience will understand the full message. People are more affected and possibly persuaded by someone who is precise in their manner. Being clear and concise is vital in any part of verbal communication, whether giving a presentation, speaking in a meeting, or coaching a team. Using the right words is an art, and there are a few that work often. Concise communicators stick to the point and make sure they don't confuse the listener. The chances for misunderstandings are less, and the chances to engage someone in a more in-depth conversation are increased. Often, successful leaders are those who master the art of using the fewest words to convey their message. Using appropriate tone and language. Think fast and talk smart also mentions the importance of trying to match the pace of the person to whom you are speaking. Good speakers will naturally adjust their speaking pace to match that of their conversation partner. The reasoning behind this is that people are more comfortable when listening to someone who is speaking at a similar pace to themselves. For those not used to doing this, a helpful hint is to try and gauge the other person's pace based on how quickly they respond to questions or comments. Someone who responds quicker may do so because they have already grasped your meaning and are thinking about their reply. On the other hand, someone who responds after a pause may be trying to process what you have said and clarify it in their mind. In this case, it is likely that they would prefer if you slow down a little and elaborated on the topic. Think of tone of voice as the way you say something. It is the intonation, rhythm, and stress you put on specific words to communicate a meaning. Appropriate use of a specific tone can vastly differ depending on the setting or person with whom you are speaking. Because of this, having good rapport with your conversation partner is important. Knowing them or having interacted previously gives you a base on which to judge how you should sound. If they are a superior at work or someone to whom you want to display respect, you will likely want to use a more formal and polite tone. If you are speaking with a close friend or family, a more casual and relaxed tone will be appropriate. Another factor to consider when choosing a tone of voice is the topic being discussed. Sensitive or serious issues will warrant a more somber or sympathetic tone, regardless of setting. Failure to use an appropriate tone can often lead to misinterpretation of your meaning. Chapter 3. Nonverbal Communication. As a speaker and communicator, you will employ nonverbal communication, and in some cultures, gestures and body language are typical ways to express oneself. This notion that gesture is culture-bound is a main theme in the scholarly work conducted by David McNeill. McNeill is known to be one of the most influential theorists in the field of gesture and is recognized as the founder of the modern-day studies of gesture. Think about how often it is used to express an idea when the specific spoken language term temporarily eludes you. You'll often see presenters doing this in the middle of a presentation, and McNeill refers to this phenomenon as a spontaneous gesture at a point of speaking, 1992, and he also includes another example of the same type of gesture, such as pointing something out when engaging in storytelling. He found that there is an underlying structure to gestures, and the way that they outline ideas and information is identical to spoken language. His discovery, known as the growth point, is the point in the cognitive process which is the threshold between what can be expressed in the spoken language and what can only be expressed in gesture or action. McNeill, 1985-1992. This topic is specifically focused on gesture, but it gives a better understanding of the definition and function of gesture, and the word gesture does in fact include body movement and posture. Especially in a presentation, a speaker's posture is very important. Posture can mold effect, Ducrot, as cited in Argyll, 1988, and it has the capacity to give the fluent or hesitant speaker an increased sense of confidence. Though there are many positive or negative attributions to certain forms of body language or movement, we must be careful about what we interpret. Just like verbal language, there is often a mixed message, and sometimes we must account for a variety of effect displays in speech. But it is widely believed that being aware of body language and effect can lead to better communication, and this is the ability to effectively send a message to another person or listen to their message. Body language and gestures. Your speech may also be more memorable if you are able to tie a gesture to a certain phrase that can then be used as a trigger for remembering the rest of the speech. Often known as an anchor, this technique can be effective. However, it is largely dependent on the audience picking up on the gesture, or it may be too subtle to be effective. A large universal movement such as a thumbs up or a head nod would be better suited. Your posture is a key part of body language and can often convey a message on its own. A good, strong posture suggests confidence. However, it is also important to appear relaxed. An open and natural posture will be more inviting to your audience. You're then able to use posture, add emphasis at certain points in your speech, standing up straight to denote strength of feeling or dropping your shoulders and head to convey sadness or failure. As with movement and gestures, it is important to use posture in a way that is a natural addition to your speech, rather than drawing attention away from what is being said. The body usually reflects the mind. Learn to use your body to reinforce what you are saying and to make your message more persuasive. This will involve the use of movement, posture, and gestures that can be used to add meaning to your speech. When well executed, this form of nonverbal communication can bring life and vitality to your speech. It is important to make gestures and use movement naturally. It should never be seen as staged or forced. This is likely to draw attention to the movement itself, rather than adding emphasis to what is being said. The best way to practice using body language and gestures in your speech is to be videoed giving a speech and to analyze the movement afterwards. Taking notes on specific movements and their relevance to the speech can be a huge help. Facial expressions. A smile is worth 1,000 words. And in the case of a salesperson or company representative, that smile might just be worth several $100s. There are times in the business world when a simple smile can clinch a deal. There are also times when a person's facial expression can cancel what he or she has just said. Imagine that a sales representative for a major food marketing company has just finished a presentation proclaiming the safety and reliability of the new product containers. The potential client for this company takes one look at the representative's worried facial expression and decides not to purchase. In the above scenarios, both verbal communication and unspoken feedback are taking place. They are contradictory, and in both cases, the nonverbal communication carries the greater impact. Data displayed in Table 1 alleges that when people are confronted with inconsistencies between verbal and nonverbal messages, they are more likely to rely on the nonverbal. In these two conflicting situations, the potential buyers would make judgments based upon the representative's expressions and come to their respective decisions on the crosses between the verbal and nonverbal messages. Reading facial expressions is an art scientifically termed faciology. Dr. J.T. Hare, a psychologist and leading expert in this field, defines faciology as the science of differentiation and classification of the human face and its expressions, often utilized as a guide to a person's inherent personality and character. Dr. Hare explains that the face is a complex, highly differentiated system for expressing such phenomena as emotions, moods, and feelings, and a rich source of social information about the self and personal identity. There is no one-size-fits-all method for interpreting facial expressions, only a vast span of possible emotions with a multitude of meanings differing within various contexts. Yet there are certain emotionally motivated expressions that are generally used around the world and rather easily recognizable. An expression of anger mainly consists of glaring eyes, a clenched mouth and teeth, and a lowering of the brow and nose features. Conversely, the happiness set involves a person pulling their lip corners backward and upward, lifting the upper part of the cheeks, and squinting or raising the lower part of the eyelids. Eye contact, duration and frequency of eye contact. 1. Duration and frequency may vary between different cultures and within the same culture. Arab cultures regard eye contact between the two sexes as inappropriate and even between certain members of the same sex. This may cause someone from an Arab culture to be seen as shy or deceitful. 2. In Western cultures, lack of eye contact may be interpreted as being deceptive, while Asians may interpret it as a sign of respect. 3. Canadians in general tend to hold eye contact 60 to 70% of the time during a conversation. This can be increased during public speaking to make the speaker appear more credible. B. Interpretation of eye contact. 1. Mutual gaze, eye contact in which one person is gazing at the other person who is also gazing at them, is commonly used to signal a desire for more intimate interactions, also known as hitting on someone. 2. The maintenance of eye gaze indicates that arousal or interest is high, and the eye gaze is being used selectively to monitor specific feedback. This can be useful to tell if what you are saying interests someone or if they are just being polite. 3. Staring is when eye contact is very prolonged and can lead to discomfort and even arousal and aggression. Chapter 4. Written communication. Clear and concise writing is the single most important technique in written communication. You should avoid jargon and long, complicated sentences. Simple, clear language will always be more effective. It is also vital that the purpose of the written communication is clear to the reader. You should be clear about what action you would like the recipient to take, and the message should be built around this. The simplest way to ensure clear and concise writing is to follow point 1. Know your purpose. If you know what you want to achieve from your writing, it is easier to structure your message around this. Finally, to ensure writing is clear and has achieved its purpose, you should read it back to yourself. If there are parts of your writing that are unclear to you, it is likely that its meaning will be lost on the recipient. Clear and concise writing. Fearful of the written word, many people believe that bad writing is innate. Not so, says this author. Their often repeated phrase is, "There's no such thing as good writing, only good rewriting." Writing is a process, not a result. Now, traditional style guides can be difficult to use. One woman I know, bemoaning the shortcomings of her own prose, sought advice in the elements of style. She concluded that if she had known the proper use of the colon, she wouldn't be in this fix. The fault, dear Strunk and White, is not in our colons, but in ourselves. With its focus on revising and its examples from all sorts of academic and professional writing, this chapter will help readers who think they hate to edit and rewrite. There is even hope for those souls brave enough to tackle their old seminar papers. In every successful piece of writing, from a simple email to a PhD thesis, your goal should be to influence your readers on the first reading and to make your writing easy to understand. To get your meaning across, you should understand your readers and write for their needs and expectations. Then, at the sentence level, you should consider how to make the text easy for readers to grasp. Stibia Proofreading's writing services and editing services provide the help that you need to ensure that your writing is clear and easy to understand. This is an important goal because it is frustrating for readers to feel that they have not understood a piece of writing but are unclear why. If at this point the reader is a reviewer, he or she will be forced to expend mental energy trying to understand the text clearly and may in the end give up in frustration. With academic writing, frustration can lead the reviewer to reject the argument and evidence, because an unclear passage often gives the impression of a muddled argument. So it is best for readers to feel that the writing is clear and that they are making quick progress through the text. Proper grammar and punctuation, appropriate adherence for using grammatical and appropriate usage of language and punctuation are taught here. The method of word construction and language usage has a deep impact on patients' perception of the physician. An ambiguous note may be misinterpreted and cause confusion and improper care for the patient. Alternatively, an eloquently written and logical note can lead to improved patient care. By taking the gracious opportunity to analyze and scrutinize the words and attempt to find the most accurate language, physicians can to improve their skills and patient care. Specific topics to be explored here include wordiness, sentence construction, active versus passive voice, and logic. Advice on punctuation will include proper use of the Oxford comma, colons, and semicolons. Finally, concepts could be reinforced with worksheets using actual or made-up patient cases, asking the student to write notes utilizing the various methods taught in the module and comparing expected outcomes. Formatting and organization. Structure your document. The most effective written material is often well structured. For a document, it may mean setting out the aims of the report, followed by a series of well-thought-out points and a coherent summary at the end. If a proposal is logically and clearly structured, it is more likely to be well received. With an essay, it may be worth putting a strong thesis in the introduction and then ensuring that every subsequent point builds on it. A well-structured piece of writing is therefore the result of a well-thought-out structure as opposed to a general stream of consciousness. Good written content has many of the same goals as verbal communication. It should be clear, concise, and where possible, engaging. Effectively written material is often the result of a well-thought-out and structured piece, be it a report, a proposal, or an email. The following is therefore a guide to how to produce clear, well-structured written material. Chapter 5. Interpersonal Communication. When you are in a conversation with the goal of understanding the other party's views, it is useful to take a posture of equal status. That is to say, face the other person as a friend, rather than as an adversary. It is during these conversations, when trying to understand the opinions of others, that we engage in active listening. Active listening involves things such as asking open questions, paraphrasing what the other person has said, in an attempt to feel and show empathy with the other person. This empathy is important as without it, an individual may feel that the listener has not fully understood his point of view. This is one of the very few methods of communication teaching it is, in fact, possible to convert into a formula, and our reflection on active listening and learning methods in the field has been influenced by the idea that students should engage in more active listening with their peers on our courses. Interpersonal interaction is an involving process. It may not follow logic or reason. It is dynamic and generally unpredictable, and its outcomes carry a high level of importance to all of us. A major part of this interaction is communication, but it is a case of communication which usually cannot be taught or turned into a formula. Interpersonal communication concerns one-on-one conversations with people whose opinions are important to us. It is about what happens when we exchange views with another individual in an attempt to understand their frame of reference or see a problem from their point of view. In these dialogues, we will influence and be influenced by the other party. While we should always be clear and assertive in such discussions, it is the nature and style of our assertion that is important, and this cannot be taught. A person's style of interpersonal communication is often a reflection of their own personality, general communication style, and negotiating tactics. Building rapport. You will know when you have established rapport with people when you are truly comfortable with each other. At a subconscious level, you are using within your sentences one or more of the following mannerisms. Speech rate. Matching the speed of speech of another person shows understanding. If the person you are talking to is aware of this and sees it happening, it can be quite a comical situation. A conscious speed change by the other person will usually follow. Be discreet with this. It's a powerful tool that can make the other person feel more at ease, yet if executed poorly can be embarrassing for both parties. Eye contact. The big one. Making eye contact changes the whole dynamic of a conversation. You can see how someone's mood changes when you make eye contact. To begin with, eye contact can be quite awkward for long periods, especially if there is a romantic notion in the air, yet persistent eye contact with a smile when someone is talking shows that you are interested in what they have to say. Keeping that eye contact during your dialogue shows confidence and rapport. It's the same in job interviews. Be aware that cultures differ in what is acceptable with eye contact, and some people have deeply rooted eye contact issues, potentially from trauma as a child. It is still a valid measure of rapport. Gestures. We all use our hands to explain ourselves, yet most of the time are not aware of doing so. If you see the other person has stopped gesturing when talking to you, they may feel that they are not getting the message across. This could also mean that they feel uncomfortable showing their feelings around you. Forge the gap by explaining that you get the idea or start gesturing yourself. They are likely to spontaneously start again too. Empathy and understanding. Active listening is the most important way to show a person that we are trying to understand them. Drollinger et al., 2006. Often people just want to feel understood, and it is frustrating for a person not to be able to get their point across. By being an active listener, we can confirm our understanding by reiterating what the other person has just said and taking their conversation point in a slightly different direction. By understanding and possibly expanding on their point, we are showing them that we have really listened and understood. This is important as it makes the other person feel validated, and it could lead to a solution of the person's emotional concern, or it might make them more willing to consider the speaker's point if they feel that their own point has been understood. Understanding what others are feeling is often not an easy task. Here, we must distinguish between sympathy and empathy. The former is about feeling sorry for the other person. It often involves feeling a similar emotion to the person you are trying to help and is likely to hinder that effective and appropriate communication. Empathy, on the other hand, is understanding their situation and their emotions, but remaining impartial. Kurdek, 1994. Empathizing for the other person is the most respectful and caring act that we can show in a conversation, as we are showing that we value the other person and wish to try and understand things from their point of view. This can be done by perspective taking, in which we mentally walk in their shoes and imagine what it would be like to be them in that situation. Min Tools, 2014. Conflict resolution. In no methods of conflict resolution should aim to satisfy its own interests at the expense of the other party. There is no better outcome than when both sides can work together to reach a win-slash-win solution where both parties' goals are achieved without there being a loss in respect, self-esteem, or damage to the relationship. If both parties hold out hope for the damaged relationship, they should aim to rectify the cause of the conflict so it does not arise again. Proactive behavior is preferred to a reaction, and addressing a potential conflict cause before it affects the relationship shows concern and that the matter is taken seriously. Conflict can arise anywhere. Unfortunately, interpersonal interactions are not exempt. A conflict engenders an increase in negative emotion, defensiveness, and can easily escalate and involve others. While conflict resolution is not an essential transaction in all conflicts, it is very important when it encounters a task or relationship violation where both sides wish to remain associated in a positive manner. Stepping back and analyzing the situation may lead to the conclusion that the costs and time of resolving the conflict are too high and a damaged relationship is not salvageable. But if it is a task or relationship worth saving, there are steps to be taken in order to achieve a win-slash-win solution. Chapter 6. Communication in Professional Settings. Effective presentations are vital to any business person. This is why it is the first professional setting covered in this text. Your ability to sell your ideas in a clear, concise, and compelling manner will greatly affect your earning potential in any field. This is also the most daunting area of communication for many individuals. They would rather speak in a language they are unfamiliar with than do a presentation. However, this skill can be learned and mastered with the techniques provided in both this text and any local public speaking courses you can find. The key to effective presentations lies in thorough preparation and practice. This may not alleviate the nervous jitters entirely, but it will significantly decrease them. Always know that your nervous feelings are usually unnoticed by your audience. This knowledge will allow you to focus on the presentation and not your performance. Good communication skills provide the key to professional success. Whether your talents are in finance or the fine arts, you can enhance your career by improving your communication techniques. This premise underlies the goals of this text. Most business people recognize the importance of possessing strong communication skills in the workplace. Recently, however, there has been a shift in focus. Many businesses are now identifying a need for communication training for their employees. This may be due to a myriad of factors, such as the explosion of technology, a wide range of employees from various cultures, or a push toward quality customer service. Effective presentations. Alternatively, you could begin by engaging people's attention with the topic. Something that has a hook has more chance of staying in their minds and being discussed further. For example, say, "I'm going to talk to you about something very important, your job." Presentations involving some form of media can benefit from holding an equipment check to ensure that it is working correctly. I'd once had a colleague who was presenting to a large group of clients. He had made the slides in advance and then found that the computer he was using was not able to support his version of PowerPoint, resulting in a scramble to find a compatible laptop. A PowerPoint slide appearing differently than the presenter imagined is a common issue, and my friend was lucky to avoid this. Make sure the equipment is suitable for the size and layout of the room. The text on a slide may seem legible when sitting up close to a monitor, but when projected from a distance, something smaller than font size 24 can be difficult to read. If using a projector, make sure the room has adequate lighting conditions. Too dark or too light will hinder the audience's viewing of the slides. The goal is to create a concise yet coherent text of at least 1,800 characters or 2 to 3 paragraphs, exploring the content for the section Effective Presentations on the day of the presentation. A plan is essential for an effective presentation. When meetings have been called, the tendency is often for people to dive in and start with the first issue on the agenda. If you do this, your audience may end up more confused and frustrated than they would be if they fully understood the issues involved in the first topic. This can be avoided by a method of careful signposting. If you tell your audience where they are going and how long they have to get there, they are more likely to remain with you. Professional networking. There are 2 main types of network: informal and structured. Informal networking often takes place within social, community, or special interest groups. It can be based around shared interests or common activities. Structured networking often takes place in a professional setting where the aim is to meet and get to know people who may be mutually beneficial to know. This can be a rather artificial process, and many people feel uncomfortable selling themselves. This often takes people out of their comfort zones, but is a vital way to further careers and find new opportunities. Networking can be described as the development and maintenance of mutually valuable relationships. Good networks are built before they are needed. A well-constructed network can provide support, feedback, information, new opportunities, and help further career aims. Networking can often be an enjoyable and stimulating experience that can provide a source of new friends and interesting contacts. Business etiquette. To make the right contact at any professional function, it is essential to be skilled in business etiquette. Business etiquette is quite simply the science of dealing with people in any form of business, and it has only one set of rules. Courtesy is the acceptable behavior of one grown man towards another. It is important to remember that you don't get a second chance to make a first impression. Every contact you make with people at work functions will influence what they think of you. It is essential to ensure that these first meetings are positive. Show confidence even if you are nervous. Stand up straight, make eye contact, and offer a keen, but not bone-crushing handshake. If you are unsure of the etiquette in a certain situation, follow the lead of a more experienced coworker. Dressing well is also key. Ensure that you are dressed appropriately for the function you are attending. Attire that is too casual or too formal will make you feel out of place, which can distract you from your attire. When meeting people from other cultures, it is always a good idea to research their customs, as they may be quite different from your own. Making an error in cross-cultural etiquette can damage a business relationship beyond repair. Always conduct yourself with calm dignity, no matter what happens. This means controlling your language and expressions and also your emotions. If you feel that you have been offended by someone, do not react aggressively. Instead, tactfully mend the situation with a polite assertion of your feelings. With the right approach and a little common sense, mistakes like this can become positive opportunities to build relationships. Maintaining professionalism is a vital duty for anyone in any function. No one will take you seriously unless you can offer them a reason to do so. This means that you must always act in a manner that is mature and responsible, so as not to damage your own reputation or that of your employer. Your actions and conversation should always be intelligent and considerate. In any business conversation, it is essential that you actively listen to the other party's words. Make sure that you understand what they are saying by asking questions and seeking clarification. Always give feedback at the end of a conversation so that both parties are clear on the topic, and be sure to fulfill any promises made. At work functions, keep your conversations light and positive and avoid topics that may lead to disagreements or awkward situations. People will judge you not only on what you say, but also on how you say it. Like it or not, first impressions in speech can be heavily influenced by the speaker's accent. If you have a strong regional accent, or if English is not your first language, accent reduction training may be a good idea. This will make your speech clearer and easier to understand and will help to avoid any potential misinterpretations. Finally, always be mindful of your posture and body language as these speak as loudly as your words. A good understanding of business etiquette will help to avoid common situations of confusion and embarrassment at work functions and will pave the way to many successful relationships. Chapter 7. Communication in Personal Relationships. Active listening is a skill of displaying meaning and understanding communication, verbal or otherwise, and is a sign that one is giving care to others. The various steps to the process follow. Clarifying is asking questions of the person that help to get a clear idea of what is being communicated. Paraphrasing is restating what has been said in the sender's own words. On an effective level, this will allow for a check of one's understanding of the other's message. This can also show the other person that the listener is making an attempt to understand. Reflecting feelings is stating what the listener believes the speaker is feeling. This is important because it helps the speaker to believe that the listener is trying to empathize. This restating of another's feelings can cause a heightened confirmation or correction of what is being indicated by the reflector. Summarizing is stating one's perception of the message that was given in a brief form. This allows both parties to move on from that point in the discussion with a clear understanding. This, at a high level, is what talking through a problem is. One study of physicians showed that 76% of physicians believe that they were empathizing with their patients, while 57% of the patients believed that their physicians were, in fact, being empathetic. Levinson et al., 1997. This could be one result of the lack of reflection of the feelings from the patient by the physician. Active listening in relationships. Listening has a content dimension and a relationship dimension, and comes in the basic forms of literal and empathic listening. Literal listening is important for accurately understanding others in any of the content areas of their messages. Did he say, "I feel depressed because I did poorly in math," or did he say, "I feel depressed because I'm not getting anywhere in life"? Literal understanding also sets the ground for empathic understanding. Empathy consists of understanding the feelings and attitudes of another and indicating this understanding through feedback. Empathic understanding means going further than just comprehending content. It's understanding the meaning and sensitivity behind the content. And it is this sort of understanding that holds the highest positive correlation with satisfaction in personal relationships. Without empathy, there is the danger that we will understand another's feelings correctly, but that the other person will think we are indifferent to those feelings. Yet listening, the ability to accurately receive and interpret messages in the communication process, is a crucial skill. It should be obvious in personal relationships that the better we understand each other, the stronger our bond will be. Measures of comprehension show the presence and the level of clarification and understanding of a message in the communication process. Active listening is the single most important communication skill for building and maintaining personal relationships. Too frequently, people see communication as a soliloquy. This is especially pronounced in cultures that place high value on telling it like it is and teaching their children how to talk back and win an argument. There is relatively little emphasis placed on refined listening skills. Many people are preoccupied with making themselves heard. As one client said, "My problem is that I can't get my wife to listen to me." Seldom you hear someone say something such as, "My problem is that I can't get myself to hear my husband." Expressing emotions. A vital part of communication in personal relationships is expressing emotions. By conveying needs, desires, fears, and various other feelings, one can build closeness with a partner and gain better understanding with one another. But there are right and wrong ways to communicate emotions. Often typical of traditional male gender roles, anger or aggressiveness is a common emotion for men to communicate. Rather than attack your partner, try to take responsibility for your feelings and express the vulnerable feelings that are underlying your anger, such as feeling rejected, unlovable, or inadequate. Then your partner can more fully understand your perspective, and you can avoid a common communication pattern where men invalidate their partner's feelings. This can lead to a deeper understanding and intimacy if the other partner can respond in a caring way. They may have to dig deep because it's not easy to sympathize when there is a sense of being attacked. For example, they may feel a lot of anger coming from you and become defensive themselves, rather than listen to the hurt and pain that is underlying your anger. On the reverse side, it is common for women to feel that their emotions are never heard or understood. They may feel too emotional or irrational at times and be dismissed or told that they are making too big a deal out of things. This can be very frustrating and cause communication breakdown in a relationship, as emotions that are expressed and validated are a key to maintaining intimacy. Resolving relationship conflicts, communication should start with dialogue, finding out the other's views and showing a willingness to understand it. It may require the person to suspend judgment and not react emotionally to the views of the other person as to avoid misinterpretation, which may lead to further conflict. Information should be given honestly and without hidden agendas. There are no winners in a conflict of who can outsmart the other. It aims to promote understanding and find a solution beneficial to both parties. It's common for people to believe that they are good at handling objections as they have mastered the art of arguing. However, this is not true. A successful resolution through any conflict comes with understanding both the content of the disagreement and the process creating the disagreement. Primarily, it is important to use effective communication, approaching the conflict collaboratively with an open mind to learn from and empathize with the views of the other person. This, in a way, reduces the likelihood of the conflict escalating and having a detrimental effect on the relationship. Using effective communication enables the conflict to be resolved assertively and cooperatively. It should improve the situation for both sides and not focus on who was right or wrong. It can be best demonstrated by the offended party in an I statement expressing their feelings on the conflict and the effect it had on the relationship, while the other party voices the understanding of the feelings and reasons for the conflict. Chapter 8. Communication in Group Settings. Communication in groups is said to be more complex than interactions between two people. With larger numbers involved, there is an increase in the number of relationships, a greater diversity of membership, and an increase in the difficulty of reaching agreement on tasks and goals. The communication network becomes a very intricate one, and with this, the propensity for error increases, adding to the difficulty for the group to effectively communicate. This can be seen by a study that suggests the amount of misunderstandings increases with the size of the group, and with it, the probability of a misunderstanding has been shown to lead to a breakdown in group activities or even the dissolution of the team, Dahl and Rajaram. Once a team has been formed, they can begin to improve their efficiency through an understanding of the different roles within the team, particularly the functional and task roles. This will enable the team to avoid the less desirable maintenance and individual roles. Good team communication is imperative in this understanding and the need to avoid confusion between roles. Create an environment which promotes members to take on their task role, and it will provide a learning experience that in time task roles will become second nature. With good team communication, a team can also reach a stage of high productivity, and using the various skills learned from effective communications and other social interactions, a team can work on these skills to enhance the Gerald. Team communication can lead to one of two things: great successes with team building and maintenance abilities, or horrible failures which have a detrimental effect on teamwork. Team building and team communication go hand in hand. In order to build a team, you first need to form a collection of people into a group. Following on from this, you then need to turn this group into a team. Many researchers define a group as a collection of individuals and a team as a structured group working together to achieve a set of goals. The process of turning a group into a team involves establishing a clear identity and interdependence together with developing and understanding common goals. This can only be achieved with good communication. In any work setting, chances are that you will need to communicate within a group at some point. This could range from collaborative work on a report to decision-making on an important issue. This section will look at what makes effective teams and team communication before moving on to look at group decision-making and how to facilitate effective discussions. Effective team communication. The key to effective team communication is for the team to construct a range of shared understanding with the ability to act on that understanding. This may seem simple, but all too often teams do not effectively communicate their ideas and the shared understanding is never built. Team members may have completely different perceptions of the objectives, leading to inefficiency and failure. Effective team communication can be most easily achieved with a collocated team with a high bandwidth of communication between its members. This is because when a team member has a question, it can be answered immediately, resolving the issue and allowing the team to move forward. For example, think of an agile software development team working in the same room. If a developer has a question about how a certain feature should behave, they can ask the product owner there and then and get an immediate answer. This immediate feedback allows the developer to progress without any misconceptions. Now consider if that same developer was in a different location than the product owner and could only communicate via email. If he sends the product owner the same question in an email and receives a response the next day, in that time the developer may have come up with his own misunderstanding and begun working on the feature, potentially leading to rework when the correct understanding is eventually built. This concept could also be represented by Shannon's model of communications. With a higher bandwidth, the chance of noise distorting the understanding is reduced. This is not to say that collocated teams cannot become high-performing with an effective shared understanding. It is simply easier with a higher bandwidth. Facilitating group discussions. There are many activities where discussion has to occur to make a decision or to do something. In episodes such as these, discussion management becomes important. The facilitator must encourage equal participation and at times stop others from invalidating another member. There will often be mixed views on a topic, and the facilitator may have to organize the presentation of these views in an orderly manner. The facilitator plays an active role in a decision-making discussion. Oftentimes, the facilitator will also be participating in the activity. An effective group must often delegate some duties to a smaller subgroup. This can be an effective disposition, but it must be followed up accurately, and occasionally groups will forget what they were supposed to do. The facilitator can help by having frequent meetings to review the progress of the subgroup. The facilitator must clarify the objectives of the discussion and help the group achieve them. This is often done at the start of the discussion, and it is important because the members of the group will know that they have accomplished something at the end of it. Helping the group stay on task is another important role of the facilitator. Often, group discussions will stray from the topic and much time can be wasted. The facilitator must guide the group back to the topic and, at times, may be required to restrict some members from their discussion. This can be quite difficult if the facilitator is also an equal member of the group. The facilitator must, at all times, remain impartial. His or her part in the discussion may influence the decisions of other group members and restrict their freedom of discussion. The facilitator must also manage the gatekeeping function. At times, the discussion may die and creative tension may be lost. Typical group discussions often produce no results because they lack direction and purpose. The facilitation of an effective group discussion is a skill that is not always intuitive and can be quite challenging at times. The facilitator's role is crucial for the success of the group discussion. Decision-making and consensus building. While reaching consensus may be the main goal for the decision-making process, effective communication is the underlying factor that determines both decision quality and acceptance. McCarthy and Zald, 1977. Describe a decision as a course of action upon which a person has decided. This definition suggests that decision-making is a process and decisions may be considered interim steps towards an end goal. Using these definitions, Rubin and Brown, 1975, propose a model of decision as having three components: allocation among choice, a selection of a given alternative, and implementation of the decision and monitoring of its outcome. McConnell and Leibold, 1981, suggested there are 5 steps that a decision-making group goes through: recognizing the problem, making a diagnosis, finding alternatives, choosing an alternative, review. Any of these models and step sequences may be found in available research on decision-making in groups. At its most basic level, decision-making involves 2 courses of action, making a choice between 2 or more alternatives to influence future events. This may seem simple, but when applied to complex social problems, there are sometimes too many alternatives, too much uncertainty about the future, or simply a lack of consensus over what the problem is. It is under conditions of ambiguity or interconflict between members that group decision-making yields both the best and worst results compared to individual choices made by the group members. One of the primary factors that determine the quality of group decisions is the process by which a decision is made. The communication that occurs during decision-making may be viewed as a problem-solving activity that is an integral part of reaching consensus. High-quality decisions are generally defined as good ones and ones that follow logically from a comprehensive consideration of all alternatives. Janis and Mann, 1977 to 1982. However, the definition of a good decision tends to be a value judgment based on results after implementation has occurred. The process of decision-making may be viewed as a continuum ranging from rational, systematic attempts to ensure the best choice is made to intuitive, ad hoc attempts to muddle through the problem. In certain implementation stages of public policy, all of these modes of decision-making have been used at different times to correct previous decisions. Chapter 9. Cross-cultural communication. When interacting with people from different cultures, keep in mind that people have cultural filters that affect how they see the world. Culture influences people's values, beliefs, and attitudes, and these are reflected in the ways that they communicate. For example, a study found that Japanese negotiators were less satisfied after negotiating with American counterparts than after negotiating with other Japanese negotiators. According to the study, the Japanese negotiators claimed to be highly satisfied with the results of negotiations with Americans. However, the measurements for the level of satisfaction were taken on a scale that began with an unhappy face and ended with a happy face. The American negotiators provided feedback with consistently happy face ratings, and Japanese negotiators, perceiving something lost in translation between the satisfaction of the given results and the happy face ratings, as evidenced by the high ratings, believed that American negotiators must have been much more dissatisfied. This is only one example of how culture influences communication, and miscommunications can have serious consequences, ranging from simple embarrassment to lost business opportunities. Adapting communication styles is key in successful cross-cultural communication. People have different ways of presenting information and different methods of analyzing situations. Some cultures and individuals are detail-oriented and low-context speakers, while others may be accustomed to high context, looking at the big picture and inferring meaning about the details surrounding it. High-context communicators may miss details that are apparent to low-context communicators who will, in turn, find these details confusing. When communicating with high-context communicators, it is often useful to ask various questions and paraphrase to ensure full understanding of the topic. A logical method, for example, an issue tree with points and subpoints, should be used when trying to convey information to a high-context communicator. Cultural awareness and sensitivity. Cultural variations are vast, and it is often hard to understand what the rules are in a specific country or region. It's often difficult for people to know every possible custom or practice, and mistaking one of these can lead to a strange reaction or an unpleasant situation. In Marseille, France, it is an old custom for men to give a woman a small knife as a present. Offering a UK business colleague from Marseille such a present may lead to a very awkward situation. An important general rule when communicating across cultural boundaries is to avoid interpreting situations based on one's own values and norms. To a certain extent, everyone is ethnocentric, and that they believe their own culture is the right way. Try to open the mind to other ways of thinking and practice empathy by imagining oneself in the other's situation. This is the first step to understanding, and it can avert many unfortunate occurrences. Understanding cultural issues is extremely important in international business. Exchanging greetings and handshakes is a part of most cultures. In some cultures, it is normal to air kiss both cheeks. Kissing serves as a form of greeting between men and women. In South Africa, it is traditional to ask about one's family and one's health, but it is taboo to ask about one's wife. In the United States, asking someone about their health, even in a polite manner, can be considered impolite. People in some cultures speak very loudly in public, while others find this behavior disruptive. These are but a few examples of the vastly different customs which may be encountered throughout the world. Overcoming language barriers, it's essential to turn any breakdowns in communication into breakthroughs. This is especially important when there's a language barrier. Aside from the obvious and most passive method of being patiently improving your language skills, there are a variety of more active methods that can be considered. One of the most frequently mentioned methods across a variety of sources was to use visual aids. The use of images, diagrams, presentations, and the like can make a message more universal and easier to convey. A professor with the ability to speak Japanese and English told of an experience when he was able to teach a Japanese man who spoke no English but wanted to learn about hamburger disease using slides and pictures. By writing down keywords and phrases associated with his explanation, learners can also begin to associate verbal and written messages signifying those objects and actions. This method has the obvious benefit of increasing the learner's ability to understand both written and spoken English. Any native language speaker with a reasonable level of English should be able to manage this. Whether it is an appropriate practice will depend on the desired ability and current level of the learner. This method will be harder to apply if a high level of English is required and the native speaker understands the learner's language. In such cases, it may be more appropriate to use visual aids from an English native source on the subject of interest. Chapter 10. Communication technology. Globalization and technology are rapidly changing the business world, creating a demand for new-age communication skills. In challenging global marketplaces, communicative incompetence can result in lost opportunities with lucrative clients and businesses. To that end, with the advent of technology, ultra-high-speed data communication is now possible. Gone are the days of slow and unreliable written communication. Email has become the backbone of the business world, and learning how to use it effectively can save time and prevent miscommunication. Additionally, the availability of webcams has made visual communication over the internet a viable option. Being equipped to effectively communicate in video conferences can build rapport and a more personal connection with clients. Finally, social media has revolutionized the way we keep in touch. Understanding the differences in cultures on social media can prevent misunderstandings and allow for a more casual method of communication with clients. In sum, being able to utilize these forms of communication can enable one to be an effective communicator in active global marketplaces. Adapting communication styles, close friend and family relations form another frame of culture, and there are some people who will always feel like outsiders when communicating and interacting within a foreign culture. This could lead to several blunders with the assumption that they have failed to understand something simple, which is actually not known to them at all. An Italian woman told me how her father, with good intention, once sought to comfort a Japanese dinner guest by praising his country, only to make the guest burst into tears, having just recalled a family lost in Hiroshima. In the case of my former student who is now working in California, it is usually realized that your new foreign colleagues simply don't understand your oft-used office jokes. They might perceive these as a lack of seriousness and professionalism or even be offended. This can be an unpleasant wake-up call for someone who prides themselves on good rapport with coworkers. It is evident here that understanding and goodwill are not enough to prevent a serious communication mishap, and conscious effort to learn the partner's style is paramount. One should know whether to be more or less direct, what kind of body language and tone of voice to use, and what underlying assumptions are being made about the other's reaction. This latter problem is usually an automatic one, and many cannot even explain why they are feeling confused or frustrated with a cross-cultural interaction. I could bring up political or religious issues, but these are too volatile to risk offense. So I will take an issue that you are almost certainly familiar with: teaching style. High-context communicators tend to be subtle, indirect, diplomatic, and polite. They might be afraid to appear critical and cause a loss of face. Low-context communicators tend to be more overt, forthright, frank, and logical. An American student who writes an essay for a Japanese teacher might get back with many requests for changes and little direct criticism and become frustrated at the lack of clarity as to how bad the essay was. He may interpret this as a sign that he is a good writer, being encouraged to develop his potential when, in fact, the teacher thinks he should change his course. The teacher may avoid saying so in order not to demotivate the student. These two have made a great blunder in the assumption of the other's style. One thinks the other has no confidence in what he is saying, and one thinks the other is being too critical. 90% of what the teacher says will go over the student's head. It will be akin to reading an announcement in second language acquisition. The rice cooker comment was my host's delicate way of pointing out something that she thought was a mistake, but did not wish to confront me with. I knew that the rice cooker is set to start cooking rice at a specific time and pondered the possibility that rice cooker clock reading could be used as an estimation of departure from a house. Now in America, we would probably not wait for an opportune moment to bring up the matter, as my host had, and it might have been introduced to me as an observation or even as a joke. The point is that different cultures may deal with the same issue in different ways. In my first week in Japan, my host said to me, "You sleep late sometimes, don't you?" I was surprised and asked, "How did you know?" She said, "I could tell because the rice cooker was already empty when I got up." I was about to deny this well-founded allegation when I realized that saying I had overslept, when all she had said was that she could tell from a rice cooker, was even more difficult to explain. Cultural differences in communication styles are often the most difficult differences to spot and can create the greatest misunderstanding. Someone once said, "I know that you believe you understand what you think I said, but I'm not sure you realize that what you heard is not what I meant." If any of you have lived in a foreign country, as I did in my 4 years in Japan, you will know that this happens all too often. Email etiquette. So what are the components of an effective email, and what is the etiquette that is expected? The definite answer to this question can depend on who you are asking. However, the general consensus would be that an effective email is one that clearly and tactfully relays the message to the receiver without ambiguity or misinterpretation. An effective email should also reflect the writer's professionalism, the image of the person or party the email is representing, and the nature or urgency of the subject contained within the email. Email etiquette is expected to be different among every culture. For example, the expectations of email etiquette in Japanese culture can vastly differ from the email etiquette of Western culture. Email etiquette can even differ depending on the age, status, or the familiarity of the people communicating. Email etiquette being a vast topic, this paper will outline only the various general etiquette methods to constructing an effective email that applies to the common communication between people of Western culture. The email has become the universal tool for the facilitation of written business communication. As the in-person and voice-to-voice range of communication on the telephone diminishes in an era of globalization, the email is expected to become even more important. However, for the exact same reason, the number of emails a person receives and needs to send on a daily basis can rise to an overwhelming amount. Which emails will leave a lasting impression when finally read by the receiver? Answer: the email with the proper etiquette. Email etiquette is the way one should properly construct an email using the appropriate elements and tools. By using the proper email etiquette, one can convey a professional attitude in an email, thus creating a positive image of the sender in the eyes of the receiver. Video conferencing. Bad communication can turn a difficult negotiation into a costly failure. A few years ago, while working with a team of lawyers and analysts on an antitrust case, I witnessed poor communication nearly lead to a disaster in court. Our client, a large technology company, had been accused of abusing a standards-setting process to exclude competitors. The European Commission planned to issue an antitrust case alleging that the company's behavior had violated European law. This would have caused incalculable damage to our client, both in its legal position and in its relations with European customers. The case was complicated, and it was difficult to keep all team members on the same page in understanding the details and their implications for strategy. Luckily, through careful analysis and a well-timed internal presentation to the company's top executives, we were able to understand the disaster that might await us and change our approach. One development in particular impedes communication in the modern workplace: the rise of global teams. While such teams make good business sense, allowing companies to take advantage of time differences, new sources of talent, and cost savings, they often face communication challenges. Working across cultures and time zones, team members can find it hard to keep in touch. Email and telephone discussions are often too impersonal, leading to misunderstandings or even strained personal relations. To ensure effective communication, leaders of global teams must find ways to build rapport and foster understanding among team members. In various companies as a consultant, I have used the method of real-time communication to bridge gaps in understanding and keep dispersed teams in touch. High-stakes negotiations present another situation where effective communication can be difficult. While working as a management consultant in the United States and then throughout the world, one of the first lessons I learned was that effective communication is the key to getting things done. Whether you are trying to communicate with a difficult boss or an excitable subordinate, good communication can soothe concerns, prevent misunderstandings, and facilitate success. Given the importance of communication, it always surprises me how poorly it is done. Since my days as a lecturer at Stanford to my work today as a negotiator and mediator in various industries, I have seen a great deal of bad communication. Social media communication. Email has long been considered the fastest form of written communication in the business world, and by many measures it still is. But social media is starting to give email a run for its money. And for better or worse, social media is starting to be used more frequently for business written communications. In the US, there are about 18.3 million work hours spent on Facebook and 17 million on LinkedIn as of 2011. It is challenging for organizations to communicate a consistent professional message with the same kind of immediacy and convenience that individuals expect from social media. Email and more traditional written communication methods may be too slow to satisfy these expectations. Much like texting, social media allows individuals to send a quick message to one or more persons, thus being the less formal channel for written communication. Due to the public nature of posting to social media walls, people must consider the more widespread audience that may view their posts. This can be either good or bad. One can use the audience to knowledge share or to provide a reminder to the team to complete a task. Of course, it is also possible to embarrass oneself by sharing too much personal information or information that is unprofessional. Social media's written communication can be saved and shared. Therefore, it is important to recognize that negative communications can have a longer-lasting impact than the few seconds it took to write and send the message. Due to the casual nature of social media writing and the challenge for a consistent professional message, it is appropriate to consider using rich picture to model and share the impact of social media on the culture of the organization.
If you found this content enriching and valuable, we would be deeply grateful if you could express your appreciation through liking and subscribing. Your support is incredibly meaningful and enables us to continue creating content that resonates with you. For those who think this is a great gift for yourself or for your loved ones, you can find the link in the description.